Today, we're going to perform a little magic. Caitlin Leline Hatch, tell me about that. What are you going to do today?
Hi, Eric. Thanks so much for having me. So yes,
You're
I
welcome.
show you how to put a little magic into your paintings.
You're going to show us how to put magic into your paintings. Well, your paintings are magical, Caitlin. You have incredible paintings. Now you tend to do a lot of wildlife and pets and some people with pets. But we're going to show how to get some of the magic, and the magic, it appears, is really more about some of the things you put into your paintings. And so we're going to teach you that today. And that is what we're going to do today on Art School Live. And let's get the show started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes.
Welcome to Art School Live. We're here every weekday at 12 noon. And you can find us just by going to YouTube and looking up Art School Live. Of course, when you're there, you can hit the subscribe button. That's always nice to have you as subscribers as we grow and reach the world. We have people in 29, 30 countries who consistently watch the program every weekday. We have people that get together in the chat. Welcome. We love it when you guys just start interacting with one another. Today, our guest is Caitlin Leline Hatch. And if you just tuned in, she's going to teach you how to put magic into your paintings, and she's going to demonstrate that because she does mostly pet portraits, but you can use this magic in any medium, and you can use this magic in any kind of painting, any subject matter. So we're pretty excited about that. We have for you today a prize, and that is a subscription, a 1-year subscription, our gift to you. If you are the one that we pick in the comments, just make a comment, and we will send you a digital subscription to Fine Art Connoisseur magazine, which is our magazine for art collectors and artists. And the digital has 30% more content. The prize from our last program is Corey Louie in Boise, Idaho, who won the value specs. We have a brand new video that just was released, Georgia Mansour. It's called Vibrant Watercolors. Check it out at painttube.tv. And also, we have something for you. This is a free ebook, and it's called Watercolor Mastery. You can get it, yours for free, at americanwatercolor.net/ebook. How easy is that? A reminder to subscribe to this program on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Art School Live, or me, Eric Rhodes. Okay, now we're going to go back to Caitlin. And Caitlin, looks like you're all set up and ready to go. What are you doing here?
All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about what this magic is and what it means for me. So for me, magic means capturing that essence or that energy of the subject that you're working with. And that oftentimes means capturing movement in a piece. And if the subject is standing still, or even if it's an inanimate object, there's a certain vibration that your subject is giving off. And that's what I try to capture and portray in my work. So I'm always looking for ways to lose edges. All the other foundational elements of art need to be there and to be strong, but losing edges really helps create that illusion of movement or vibration. So even in the more detailed areas of your work, for example, this eye that we're going to be painting, I still want movement. I still want this detailed focal area to speak to the viewer in a way that sparks something more than just paint on paper. And that's when you start to see that magic happen.
All right.
So
you were on Watercolor Live a couple weeks ago.
I was. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful.
You should tell everybody your story, because a lot of people missed that. Even though there was a massive number of people watching on Watercolor Live, there's an even bigger number of people watching this.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it was a delight to meet so many fabulous people. And yeah, I'm a mother of 2 youngish children. We run a dairy farm here in Southwest Wisconsin and make handmade cheese. So very classic Wisconsin.
So you would be what they call in Germany a Käsekopf.
Perhaps. I'm not familiar with that term.
Käse is cheese, Kopf is head, so cheese head.
Oh my God. Yes, we are the classic cheeseheads. All right. So to get started, I like to leave the lighter areas of my artwork alone until I'm ready to soften edges around them. So I'm going to start with my midtones, actually. And I've got, I think you've got the photo reference up.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So
Christy.
I'm gonna start with that mid-tone value of the inner, the iris of the eye, and just get that value in there first, just to kind of give me somewhere to start. And I don't normally shade in this much with graphite, but I thought for the viewers it'd be easier to kind of see what I'm doing and sort of be a visual roadmap for you to kind of follow along. It's also a great tool if you're feeling like you have to make a lot of decisions right away, and watercolor is really difficult because it's all about timing, and if you miss your timing, sometimes you can't recover from that. So this can just help you be certain about where you are on your painting and help you make decisions a little more quickly. All right, so I'm going to start by using a little Van Dyke Brown, a little tiny bit of transparent orange, and some raw sienna. And I have wet the front and back of my paper already. I might actually re-wet that a little bit just so I know how much water is in the paper. But I like to have my paper soaked all the way through to the core of the paper because it allows me more time to work on my piece. And like I said, with watercolor, timing is everything. And so the more time you can create and give yourself to make decisions or correct values or shapes, at least for me, that's always a bonus. So I'll just blot dry the area that I'm going to be working in now so I don't have the water or the pigment running out everywhere, out of control. I do want quite a bit of detailed control here. All right, so I don't have a lot of water on my paintbrush, so you can see the pigment's fairly sort of like a cream consistency. But because there's water in my paper, it's going to still move and have some beautiful soft edges that I can work with. It just allows me to be in control a little bit longer. So I'm just going in and looking for the big shapes. I'm not too worried about where I'm going with this because I can always push and pull the pigment around as I'm working. I'm dropping in a little more raw sienna just to lighten this area a little bit, and just kind of making a little bit of that roadmap a little clearer for myself. And I really like to change colors often. I think it's important, especially in watercolor, because we don't have as many tricks to use to build up texture, which can create that sense of movement as other mediums do. And so I think changing color can be really beneficial for those of us working in watercolor to help create another way of creating movement, which ultimately helps create that magic I was talking about. So I'm using ultramarine blue and a little bit of sepia here to create a nice dark. And I'm going to go in right next to this iris here and start dropping in my darks. And you can see that there's a nice soft blending of edges. So it's merging, but it's also staying put. It's not out of control, but it creates that really soft blending, which I think is nice and helps create that sense and illusion of form. And form is so important in art. We're working on a 2D surface and we're trying to create that illusion of 3D mass, and it's all about form. And so if you can capture form by reminding yourself how light hits round objects, even if you don't see some of that happening in your reference photo, if you just use that, in your brain, your mind of what and how form is created, you can kind of make it up as you go along and make sure you're finding your
People are asking questions, Caitlin, about your brush and your paper.
Sure. Of course. I am using right now a black velvet silver, size 14. Wonderful for details. I really like this brush. And then my paper is Lawn Aquarella. It's cold press, 140. And for me, it's so wonderful because it holds pigment just in the right way for this technique. And as I said before, I'm pretty busy on the farm here, and so if I had to stop right here, right now, I could, and I could re-wet everything at another time and come back. And this paper just allows me to soften edges and work in smaller sections than trying to put in all my lights first, and then my mid values, and then my darks. I kind of just work in one area to completion before moving on to the next area.
Cool.
And because all this water is in the core of my paper, oftentimes before I had learned about this technique, this would have been dry by now. I wouldn't be able to soften edges, but I've got almost as much time as I want. I can keep re-wetting the back of my paper. I can use this really cool, handy, continuous spray bottle that really just has a very soft mist to it, so it doesn't disrupt the paint on the paper, and I can basically reactivate everything to a point where I can keep working on it. So it really has changed everything for me as far as where I've come and where I'm at now with my watercolors.
Hey, you guys, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to see where you are.
So again, I'm just laying in these darks. I'm thinking about my mid-tone values and where I'm going to want to make those transitions toward my lights. I'm going to come in with a little bit of a softer mid-tone here. I'm going to add some royal blue to my raw sienna. And then I want to gray that down a little bit so it's not so green. So I'm going to add a little opera rose or opera pink. And I always mix on my palette, and I always just keep adding colors until I find the color and the value that I'm looking for. So I rarely mix pigments on my paper, just so I can feel like I have a really clear vision of what's going to happen and be a little bit more in control. And I tend to push and pull with my imagination the colors that I'm seeing. Working off of a photograph is difficult because you lose a lot of the information through that lens. And so I try to squint down. I try to look really hard and imagine what I might have seen, or try to remember what I did see when I took the photograph, and try to incorporate that into what I'm seeing and doing here. And I try to also leave little extra areas of white. I let my paintbrush skip over the surface, because there's always an opportunity to have a little extra fleck of light coming through that maybe isn't there in your photograph, but could be a good story or good part of the story to help explain what it is that you're seeing. And if you cover everything up and lose your whites, there's really no coming back from that. So I try to skip around my paper a little bit, try not to make the same brush strokes everywhere, so that there's a little more diversity happening. And then I'm going to come into these light reflective areas and start to drop in a little of this royal blue, which is a really beautiful color for reflective surfaces. And I'm not going to cover the whole thing again, even though in the photo reference, it's a fairly solid reflective color, but I know that in real life, the light is always moving. And again, we want to capture that illusion of movement. So I'm trying to remember what it might be like in real life versus, the stagnant or staticness of a photograph. And I also know that some of this is going to bleed in. So I also want to be really careful. I may have come in here a little too soon. So I'm going to try to not touch those edges anymore. Try to carve out a little bit of that. And I'll come back and soften those edges a little later once that paint has had time to dry. But soft edges, I think, is pretty key also to creating the illusion of form. There's really almost no hard edges in life other than man-made objects, and so anything in nature tends to have softer edges. And while things may be more detailed or clear at times, because of that movement and things moving, it's always going to be a little bit more of a blur. All right, so I've got these eyelashes coming in, and I don't want those to be very hard edged. So I'm going to fill them in with a little bit of this royal blue just to knock back that white. Might grab some of the gray mess over here. The blue's a little too intense. And I'm going to just cover those up, and then I'm actually going to use a synthetic brush to pull that pigment back off and actually lift the pigment off and create a little bit more of a natural line.
So a synthetic brush is going to be better for pulling color out.
Yes. So I use an angled synthetic brush because I can get a really nice long line, and it's not going to move on me because it's pretty stiff. This is a Robert Simmons half-inch sapphire. So if I come in here with a damp brush, but I dried it off, it's clean, and now I'm going to actually pull it away. I'm going to create more of these beautiful lines that look much more natural than what I just had on the paper.
But you're not taking all the color out. It's just taking a little bit of it out, right?
Correct. Yeah, I don't want to take everything off, but I wanted to put color down so that there was still something there when I started lifting, so it wasn't just the white of the paper.
Got a big audience from all over the world today.
Ooh,
Tell us where
wonderful.
you guys are watching from.
Hello, world. It's great to see you.
Well, we had 29 countries watching on Watercolor Live.
Oh, amazing.
In every state in the U.S.
It's pretty wonderful how connected we can be these days. I feel very grateful for all the friends I've met through different watercolor events from around the world. All right, so I'm going to come back and soften up some of these edges again. But I do like to soften edges with some kind of color on my paintbrush, because if I were to just go in with a clean brush, it would actually start lifting pigment rather than softening edges. And I don't want to be lifting anything right now. I just want to blend those edges a little bit more so it feels more natural. So in my work, my detailed areas take me the longest of the whole painting. Once I start moving away from my focal areas, I try to loosen up and let the water have more of a voice in my work. But in this detailed eye area, it's my main focal point, so I want to have the most control. So I'm still leaving little flecks of white. I don't want to cover up that white all the way, even though in my photo reference, there's really not a lot of white sparkling happening right here, but it's important for me to step away from the photo and to squint and look at my own work for what it is and ask myself if it's working, great. If it's not, I can always cover it up. But the more opportunities I have to create little highlights and sparkles, the better. All right, so even though my paper is still damp, I can see it's drying. So I'm actually just going to pull it up and spray the back a little bit so that the water can keep creeping into that core. And then I would actually take another brush and re-wet everything around where I'm working, because that will help, again, keep more moisture in the paper and let me work for longer periods of time. And it also allows me to come back here and soften all these edges, even though I've left them for quite a while. I might need a little bit of a scrub here and there, but I usually can still get that softness without much effort.
Would you explain to somebody what you mean by a substrate?
Substrate? Did I just say that?
Somebody in the questions ask about substrates. Did you not mention it, or did somebody else mention it?
I don't think I did, but meaning like the surface that I'm working on?
Yeah, the surface.
Sure. Oh, so I'm working on a gator board. So it's just a really hard board. I think there's foam on the inside, but there's a waterproof, I guess it's probably some kind of plastic, so that I can, the water doesn't seep into it and warp that. But it's a great board because you can staple into it. So when I'm all done, I'll staple my work down so it dries completely flat. And yeah, it's been a great, way better than plywood. When I started doing watercolors, I would haul plywood around, and that was always a little bit awkward. All right, so I could just keep going here, but I did want to show you, once you move away from the detailed focal area, then even though there are other areas of the animal or subject, whatever it is that you're working on, I think it's important to keep true to where your focal point is, and then everything else around it isn't going to be treated in the same way. It's going to be a little bit softer. You're going to have a hierarchy of what's important. So this would be my main goal here. Then maybe the muzzle and the lips would be my next, and then the ears would come third, even though it's sort of all on the same plane. So I'm going to show you next how to create more of a soft, fuzzy texture feeling of fur that has a lot less detail and a little bit more spontaneity and movement and excitement.
Okay, so you're moving on to a new demo now?
I'm going to move on to a new demo.
I'll tell you what, why don't you just take a breather, and I will be right back, and we'll just take a quick little break, and then we'll come back. All right? Sound
Wonderful.
good?
Sounds great.
All right. Our guest today is Caitlin Leline Hatch. In case you're just tuning in, she's teaching you how to put some magic in your paintings, and she has incredible pieces to show you, and she's going to show you some technique today. So it's really terrific. We're here every day at 12 noon, and we love to have you guys here. We have people watching from all over the world. I made a list. Wow. Malawi, East Africa, Portugal, Toronto, Norway, Mumbai, India, St. John, New Brunswick, Surrey, England, Yorkshire, England, Edmonton, Denmark, Ireland. Make sure you put yours in the comments. We love that. And you can win something in the comments. Today, we're giving away a subscription to Fine Art Connoisseur magazine, a digital copy, so you can get it anywhere. And so just put a comment in the comments. We're going to pick from the comments, both on live and replay. Also, just to tell you guys that we have a free ebook for you. Just go to AmericanWatercolor.net ebook. It's talking about watercolor mastery techniques. And of course, you can subscribe to this program. We're here every day at 12 noon, and we love having you here. Okay, just go to YouTube, Art School Live. Okay, now coming up, next big event we got a whole, this is kind of like the season, right? It's like there's a ton of things going on. The next event we have is Plein Air Live. It's going to be online coming up in March. And then I'm taking a group in March to Plein Air Japan, which is painting in cherry blossom season. That's sold out. And then we have the big Plein Air Convention. Plein Air Convention is coming up in Cherokee, North Carolina in May. That's almost sold out. It's going to be huge. There's this battle going on. It's like, who's going to win? When I first, everybody said, you got to bring the convention east of the Mississippi. And I'm like, well, our statistics, our data shows us that we get more people in the West. And everybody said, no, there's more painters in the East. And And so we said, okay, well, we're going to try it. So we scheduled in Cherokee, North Carolina, Great Smoky Mountain National Park area. And it's now this big tug of war. It's like, all right, are we going to get more registrations from the East or more registrations from the West? Right now, the West is winning. So you guys in the East, I mean, you could make this the biggest plein air convention ever, but so far it's not. But it's close. So you need to get in there and get registered for plein air convention. That is in Cherokee, North Carolina. Just go to pleinairconvention.com. And then after the plein air convention, right away, I have Paint Adirondacks, my retreat, which is coming up in June in the Adirondack Mountains. It's limited to 100 people, and there's only 25 slots left, from what I understand. 20 or 25, I'm not sure what the number is. And that's kind of fun. Anyway, you need to watch this right now about this.
It has made the difference in my world.
I get invigorated.
Today was just fantastic.
I love it. It's just brilliant.
I mark it off on my calendar.
It was amazing.
I need the community.
I always wanted to go to art school. I feel like this could be it. The amount of value that is delivered is incomparable.
When I did your first plein air live, I was only breaking into plein air, and that just opened up my world.
Every day I say this is the best day, and again, it's another best day.
I'm taking notes. I'm watching what people are doing.
I really am very grateful for the opportunity to just look over the shoulders of these great artists.
It has taught me not only better plein air, it has made me a better studio painter as well.
You know, the lineup is just so amazing.
Thank you for introducing all these wonderful new artists to me.
Everyone you have on here is fabulous.
You learn something from every single teacher every single time, and it's just brilliant.
It has made the last 3 years really bearable.
Somebody like me really can't get to a convention. You know, this is really special.
I need people to paint with, even though we're not all physically together.
But then the relationships that are formed, I think that's what's really long lasting.
It's just really fun to see people that you become friends with, you know, throughout the years.
There's always something to learn, no matter how many years you've been painting, or if you're a very beginner.
It has exceeded my expectations, and I've already signed up for next year.
This is my second year, and I definitely signed up for next year.
This is my 5th live event.
I was so happy I went for it. You know, this is really special.
We're going to do it again. It's going to have a worldwide audience. It's going to be people all over the world, all over the United States watching. We have faculty members from all over the United States, but also all over the world. It's really a lot of fun. Just join us. Go to pleinairlive.com. Okay, back to Caitlin Leline Hatch, and she's going to do another demo. She's going to tell you how to soften up the ears now.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Eric. So yes,
welcome.
As I move away from my focal point of my eyes, I tend to try to free up a little bit more with my brushwork. I want to be a little bit more impressionistic as I move away from my focal area, so that by the time I move to the body of my animal, or if it's a landscape, the further I move away from my subject, my main focal area, I'm much more spontaneous, more intuitive with my brush strokes. And I thought showing you the ears here would help show how you can diversify, going from detail to more impressionistic in style. So here I want to capture that idea of glowing light shining through the ears. So I am going to start with my lightest lights first, because this transparent orange is so lovely. It really glows. And so I'm going to take, I did re-wet the back of my paper and the front, so it's pretty wet. There's a nice glossy sheen to it. It might be a little too wet, so I might just barely touch the surface here just so that it doesn't get totally out of control. But I'm okay if it goes outside the edges now. I'm breaking through those lines. And I try to do the same treatment on both ears unless they're drastically different, because if I did one and then the other, there's a chance I might not mix my colors the exact same, and there might be a differentiation in color and value. So I do like to try to do it all at once if possible. But you can see it's starting to bleed out, creating that feathery texture of fur. And I'm
Somebody's
looking at
asking about the kind of paint you're using and the name of the paper.
So the paper is that Lawn Aquarella, 140-pound cold pressed. The paints are a variety of different sources. So I've got everything from Daniel Smith to Winsor Newton to QOR. I'd have to look at the bottles, but
Really, what
I can put that
happens is we
somewhere.
all tend to do that, right? We find the color that works best for us.
Exactly. And half of the colors on my palette I don't use, and I don't even know what they are anymore. All right, so I'm kind of just laying in a base layer here just to kind of knock back some of those whites, because I don't have a lot of true white happening here. So anything that peeks through on my next layers, I would like it to be more of that orange shining through, rather than the white of the paper. But I'm just kind of practicing my brush strokes. Even though you're not going to see these, it's giving me a chance to figure out how I might want to mimic or replicate that sense of movement of how the fur is all sort of intertangled together. So it's always a great chance for you to practice that. And then, if you've got a hard edge down here, you might like it, you might not. You might want to just soften it a little bit. This might continue to grow out. I don't think I want it to go much further than this. So I'm going to have to keep my eye on that and be aware of what's happening at the same time working into the interior of the ear. So with watercolor, it's definitely a juggle of timing and being aware of everything that's happening all at the same time. So I'm going to use a little Van Dyke Brown, transparent orange. I'm going to start getting into those midtones, but I don't want to use too much water on my brush. So I'm actually going to blot the base of my brush off so that I don't lose the pigment on the tip of the brush. But there's already so much water on the paper that I don't want to add more water. So I'm going to have a fairly dry brush, not too much water in the pigment, and then I can go start dropping in more of these textures that I'm seeing and these big shapes. I'm trying to squint down. I'm trying not to think of it as an ear. Just think of it as big shapes, lights, darks. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Practicing those brush strokes. Trying to create that illusion of fur. And I might need to go in and darken up my lightest lights, but I really wanted that mostly just for the light that's shining through. And things are getting maybe a little out of hand here, so I'm going to just gently blot some of that. Otherwise the ears are going to grow on me and not look natural. But there's still plenty of water out there, so it's going to feather. It's going to have a mind of its own for a little bit longer. Take my transparent orange again. Might touch into my rose madder, which is a beautiful color, but very powerful, and a little goes usually too far. So sometimes I'll mix it on a separate part of my palette and then touch into that, so I have a little more control over what it is that is being added to my pigments that I'm working with. But I want to create that really bright glow of that chestnut colored fur. So another great thing with this technique is that you can just keep adding and pushing and pulling that pigment around for as long as you need. And I think that's such a gift when working with watercolor, because once it's dry, you're sort of done. I mean, you can always do more layers, but as far as this technique goes, there's not a lot of things you can do to go back in once you've finished an area. So again, not really being totally worried about what's happening in the interior ear, just again, laying in shapes, practicing brush strokes, seeing what's working, what's not working, and then being able to adjust from there. So I'm gonna use a little raw sienna and darken things down a little bit. It's a little vibrant, especially I've already done some of this just to kind of add some interest down here, but that is the risk if you don't do it all at once or make notes of what colors you're using, because if you make your colors too different and don't do it all at once, you're going to potentially have problems with matching your colors. But this will dry lighter. So even though it looks a little bit intense, I know it's going to dry a couple shades lighter. So I don't want to go too light and risk having it not read well in the end. And as things dry, I can always lift a little bit out if I need to lighten things up if it looks still too dark. So I'd almost rather go darker than lighter to start. A little more rose madder and ultramarine blue. The slightest hint of purple. So again, I'm squinting and I'm asking myself, is that warm? Is that cool? Is that what I'm seeing in my work? Does it match with what I've already done? If not, like this is much cooler versus this is much warmer. So I'm going to need to adjust that to match it a little bit better. But I've got plenty of time to fuss. And I like to make sure to keep jumping around. I don't want to keep working in one area and get bogged down by the detail and forget about everything else that I'm doing. So it's easy to get trapped into one section if it's not going quite right. Take a break, step back, move on to another area, another section, and come back and look at it with fresh eyes. Even if it's, just a couple seconds later, distract yourself with something else. And that can be really helpful. I'm trying to leave some of the lights that are shining in there. Don't want to lose them completely, but if I do, I can always use that wonderful flat synthetic brush and pull color back out and pull lights back out, because I'm not worried about having the white of the paper. So I really don't mind if how the lights show up and where they show up. It's just a value question. So I'm just going back and forth between these Van Dyke Brown, raw sienna, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, the transparent orange, and just I keep searching. I keep looking at my palette. I keep flicking my eyes to my reference photo and squinting down.
Question, does Chroma fade as well?
It can, and it can certainly, depending on the paper that you're using. I used to use a different paper, and until I realized that some of my really beautiful brights would fade once it dried, and that felt so sad because I loved that paper too. But it actually wasn't the best for this technique, anyways. So it was time to move on. But yes, things will settle and fade a little. However, there are certain colors that will hold that vibrancy. And so that's why I really love that transparent orange, because it really tends to hold that bright glowing effect that I like, especially when sun is sort of dappling through fur. So it's one of those things you got to just experiment with whatever colors you're using on your palette, and maybe do some test swatches and see which ones fade. Document it, take some photographs, and see if that can help you determine what it is that you're seeing when you're working versus what happens when it dries. And then you got to store all that information either in your head or have it somewhere handy where you can look at it while you're working. So some of this again has gotten a little out of control here. And that's the beauty of watercolor, is that, you can use its spontaneity to your benefit, but it also can get you into trouble. So again, being mindful of what's happening. I'm just blotting with a dry paper towel to kind of claim back a little bit of that shape. I could go in and soften everything around that with a clean brush if I wanted to. I want to leave some of that spontaneity. That's what I do love about watercolor. But it is a dance, and the water has a voice, and you have to decide how much to let it speak and how much you need to control it. And that just comes with practice and time, and trying to get clear about what it is that you're trying to tell, what story you're trying to tell. So I'm just going to show you again with this flat brush. I might just want to pull out a few little hairs. I'm wiping it, cleaning it off. Every time I take a little swipe, I clean it off. I might even have to rinse it because I don't want to put pigment back down when I'm trying to pull it off. You can use the side of the brush and just tap the edges just to soften some things if it's gotten a little too chromatic. You can always go back in and add more if you'd like, if you take off too much.
Here's a question. I'm going to try to articulate it from Loretta. Question about the forelock. Did you lay down a light shade and then paint the darks in negatively?
Good question. No, I tend to leave my lights until later. I tend to go in with my midtones and darks first. That's not always the case, but here I left all of this white and I went in with my darks, and then used this brush to pull out some of the wispy hairs that were catching the light. And then I went in and just softened around all of that with my lights, again, softening some of those edges. However, then my shadow shape of the ear coming across the forelock was not strong enough, and it probably isn't. I probably should have gone darker in all of this, but since it was a demo, I just wanted to have something down just to give context to what it was that I'm doing here. So then I did go in when this was completely dry and just do sort of a glaze and some negative painting there, just to kind of push that value a little bit further. So again, that's what I love about watercolors. It's just all about experimenting and having the courage to try something new and not be afraid to mess it up. And yes, it is disappointing when things don't work out, but that's how we learn. That's how we grow and get better. And it's always something that you'll learn, some information, good or bad. You'll remember that for next time. And so I'm kind of squinting in here and I see some negative shapes happening. And so I might actually just kind of mimic some of those and pull those out, and kind of just let the painting speak to me a little bit more than what I'm seeing in the reference photo, and just play off of that a little bit. So I think we're getting close. And even though the ears don't quite match the coolness of the head, it's it's something to be mindful of. You know, I think I could go in when this is all dry and put a glaze of cool ultramarine and maybe some of that rose madder just to cool things off a little bit. But I think for the sake of the demo, you're getting the idea of how to create a little bit more spontaneity, a little bit more looseness in your work, and let yourself have a conversation with the water and the paint, and not be fully in control. Letting go of control
Would
is
you
hard.
explain what you were talking about using a rose madder to cool it off a little bit?
Oh, sure. So the rose madder, while it is warm, it's cooler than, you know, the oranges that I've been using in here. And then the ultramarine, again, is a blue, is going to be cooler than what I have happening here. So if I were to let this all dry and then just make a really light watery mixture of some color that feels a little cooler than what I have happening, trying to mimic some of these cooler notes in here, which were more of that rose madder and ultramarine. There's some separation or granulation happening there. Then I could just tone over both ears and just kind of help push those back a little bit. They're commanding a lot of attention right now because of that vibrant, warm orange. And while that may be what your intentions are for something, you know, if it's not, then there's always a trick in order, you know, up a watercolor artist's sleeve, I think, to help them correct values and colors, and that certainly is one of them, using those glazes at the end to slightly alter a color or a value shift. So everything's a little bit dry, so I would again go in and use this really cool continuous spray bottle, which now just reactivated all of the pigment on my paper, and now I can keep going back in and creating soft edges without it looking overworked, or it's going to move around a little bit, but because it's the ears, I'm not too concerned about what's happening there, because again, I can keep carving in and lifting or adding until I feel like they're reading in just the right way. So I think that more or less wraps up my demo and gives you
That's
guys
also
a
how to
sense.
paint a teddy bear.
Sorry?
Fuzzy.
Oh, yes.
It really
I
looks
love
fuzzy.
the fuzz.
Yeah. Well, why don't you come back on camera so everybody can meet you if they tuned in late.
All right, wonderful. Let's figure out how to do that.
Our guest today is Caitlin Leline Hatch, and Caitlin is on a farm in Wisconsin. Did you say eastern Wisconsin?
Southwest Wisconsin, in the driftless region.
Yeah. How do you find time to do watercolor painting and to get so good?
That's a very good question. I've been painting and drawing my whole life. I grew up in the actually northeast corner of Wisconsin in Door County, which is a wonderful community of artists and a community that supports the arts. So I feel very privileged to have grown up there, and parents who have always encouraged the arts. So I was always dabbling, and it was just a hobby for a long time. And then I started having kids, and there was no time. So I took about 10 years off from my artwork completely. But COVID hit, and I think like many of us, there was a lot of wondering, you know, life is short and what's important. And I woke up one day and thought, I have to do this right now. It's now or never. And I dove in deep and took so many classes online, knowing that I wanted to elevate my work. And it was the right moment, the right time. And I had put in the years ahead of time in the practice, and things just clicked and fell into place. And here we are on an incredible journey. And so I find time wherever I can squeeze it in. A lot of times it's at midnight.
Well, this was a fantastic couple of demos. Thank you so much, Kate, and for being here, Caitlin. We put all your contact information, websites, courses, and everything into the chat so everybody can find them there. What's your final piece of advice for everybody?
Just have fun. Don't let it be stressful. Just be willing to explore and experiment. It's a journey, and your journey is going to take you somewhere, but you got to put one foot in front of the other. So just keep going.
All right. Terrific. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric. Nice to see you.
Bye-bye. Our guest today was Caitlin Leline Hatch, and what a great demo that was. You can rewatch it. We put all of our demos. We have hundreds of them. Since COVID, we began, and we were doing 7 days a week for 7 months, and then 5 days a week ever since then. And so we've got hundreds, literally hundreds of these online. If you want to go in depth and get in-depth art instruction courses, we also have those too. They're at painttube.tv, and that's where you can get really in-depth, high quality, well-produced, world's leading masters, and make sure to check it out at painttube.tv. And make sure to come to Plein Air Live, March 6th through 8th. We've got a world-class group of people teaching, and we have an Essential Techniques Day on the 5th. If you only want to attend that, you can, if you want to learn all about plein air painting. I love plein air painting. I have not been out for a little while. It's been a little wet and rainy and windy. And those, I guess, the real pros would be out there anyway. I just didn't want to do that. Anyway, have a terrific day. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, we're here at 12 noon weekday every day. You can subscribe. Just go to YouTube, look up Art School Live. Make sure to hit that little bell and the subscribe button. That way you get notified when we go live. And we are live every weekday at 12 noon. Okay, thanks for being here, guys. And thanks again to Caitlin. Bye-bye.